The carriage stops. Elara Whitcomb grips the velvet seat beneath her, knuckles white. Through the window, Ravencroft Manor rises like a gravestone against the stormy sky. Somewhere in that house waits the man she'll marry in 3 days. A duke, they say, killed his own father. A man whose last betrothed vanished without a trace. Her father sold her to settle his debts. She's 20 years old, and she's about to become the wife of a monster. But what if the monster isn't what everyone thinks? Stay with me until the end of this story. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this tale travels. And if you want to know whether Elara survives her wedding night, hit that like button and let's begin. The rain had started 3 hours ago, somewhere between her father's estate and the northern border of Ravencroft territory. Elara watched it streak across the carriage window, turning the world outside into a watercolor smudge of gray and green. She'd barely spoken since they'd left. What was there to say? Her father sat across from her, jowls sagging, eyes fixed on nothing. He'd aged 10 years in the last 6 months. The gambling debts had done that, hollowed him out from the inside until all that remained was this husk of a man who'd once carried her on his shoulders through the garden. "It's a good match," he said finally, voice rough. Elara didn't look at him. "You've said that. The Duke he's wealthy, powerful. You'll want for nothing. Except freedom." The words came out sharper than she'd intended, but she didn't take them back. Her father flinched anyway, shoulders hunching like she'd struck him. "Elara, don't." She turned to face him then, and whatever he saw in her expression made him go quiet. "You made your choice. I'm living with it. But don't ask me to pretend this is anything other than what it is. What it was, a transaction. Her youth and bloodline traded for enough gold to keep the creditors from tearing apart what remained of the Whitcomb name. She'd known it was coming, had watched her father's desperation mount with each passing week, each new letter from the moneylenders, each whispered conference with his solicitor. When he'd told her about Duke Ravencroft's proposal, she'd felt nothing at first, just a cold, spreading numbness. Then the rumors had started. "Miss Whitcomb," the coachman's voice filtered through the rain. "We're approaching the manor." Elara pressed her forehead against the glass. Through the downpour, she could make out the shape of it. Ravencroft Manor, all dark stone and sharp angles, perched on a hill like something out of a ghost story. No lights in the windows. No signs of life. Perfect. The carriage lurched to a stop. Her father reached for the door, but Elara caught his wrist. "What did they tell you?" she asked quietly. "About him, the Duke." He wouldn't meet her eyes. "Only what matters. He's agreed to the terms. The wedding is set for 3 days hence." "That's not what I asked." For a moment she thought he might actually tell her the truth. His throat worked, mouth opening and closing like a fish drowning in air. Then his face hardened. "It doesn't matter what people say. Gossip is just gossip. Is it gossip that his father died under suspicious circumstances? Is it gossip that his last betrothed disappeared? Elara, is it gossip that servants refuse to work here? That half the nobility won't speak his name without crossing themselves?" Her father jerked his wrist free. "Enough. You'll conduct yourself with dignity, or so help me." "Or what?" She laughed, bitter and sharp. "You'll marry me off to someone worse? There is no one worse, father. You've seen to that." The door swung open before he could respond. A footman stood in the rain, black umbrella already raised. No livery, Elara noticed, just plain dark clothing, almost severe in its simplicity. "Miss Whitcomb, Lord Whitcomb, if you'll follow me." His voice was flat, professional, empty of warmth. Elara gathered her skirts and stepped down into the mud. The rain immediately found every gap in her traveling cloak, cold fingers sliding down her spine. Ravencroft Manor loomed above them. Up close, it was even less welcoming. All those dark windows like dead eyes, the stonework stained with age and weather. Gothic arches framed the entrance, gargoyles perched at their peaks. Someone had tried to soften it with flower boxes once, but the plants had long since died, leaving only skeletal stems rattling in the wind. "Charming," Elara muttered. "Elara-san." The footman didn't react. He led them up the steps and through the massive oak doors without a word. Inside wasn't much better. High ceilings that swallowed sound, portraits of stern-faced ancestors glaring down from the walls, furniture that looked expensive and uncomfortable in equal measure. And cold. Jesus, it was cold. The Duke will receive you in the study, the footman said. This way. They followed him through a maze of corridors. Elara tried to memorize the turns, but gave up after the third identical hallway. If she needed to run, she'd be lost within minutes. Stop that, she told herself firmly. You're not running. There's nowhere to run to. The study doors were already open when they arrived. The footman gestured them inside and vanished without another word, footsteps fading into the depths of the house. Elara stepped through the threshold and forgot how to breathe. The room itself was actually pleasant. Wood-paneled walls lined with books, a fire crackling in the hearth, leather chairs arranged in a comfortable semicircle. Civilized. Almost warm. But the man standing beside the window wasn't civilized at all. Dominic Ravencroft was tall. That was her first thought. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of build that suggested violence held barely in check. Dark hair fell across his forehead in a way that might have been careless or calculated, she couldn't tell which. Sharp cheekbones, a jaw that looked like it had been carved from granite, and eyes. His eyes were the color of slate before a storm, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Miss Whitcomb. His voice was deep, controlled, utterly devoid of emotion. Lord Whitcomb, thank you for making the journey in such weather. Her father stepped forward, hand extended. Your Grace, the pleasure is ours. Dominic's gaze didn't waver from Elara's face. He shook her father's hand absently, the gesture perfunctory. You must be tired from the road. I've had rooms prepared. Dinner will be served at 8. Finally, he looked away, turning to her father. I trust the journey was uneventful? Quite, Your Grace. Most generous of you to— If you'll excuse us, Dominic interrupted smoothly, I'd like a word with my betrothed. Alone. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elara's father stammered something, glancing between them, but Dominic's expression didn't change. Waited. Of course, her father said eventually. I'll be in my room then. He fled, actually fled, like a rabbit from a wolf. The door clicked shut behind him, and suddenly the study felt much smaller. Dominic turned back to her. You may sit if you wish. It wasn't an offer so much as a statement of fact. Elara stayed standing. I'd rather not. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or amusement. It was gone before she could name it. As you prefer. He moved away from the window, and she had to resist the urge to back up. He wasn't approaching her exactly, just occupying the space with a presence that made the air feel heavier. I imagine you have questions. A few. Then ask them. The bluntness caught her off guard. She'd expected deflection, maybe some pretty speech about their upcoming union. Not this. Did you kill your father? The words hung between them like a blade. Dominic's face remained perfectly still, but she saw his hands tighten almost imperceptibly at his sides. Yes. Elara's heart stuttered. She'd expected denial, had prepared herself for lies and manipulation, not a flat, simple confession. She swallowed hard. You're admitting it? You asked a question. I answered it. He moved to the sideboard, poured himself a whiskey with hands that were absolutely steady. Would you prefer I lie? I'd prefer you not be a murderer. Unfortunately, I can't accommodate that preference. He took a long drink. My father died by violence. I was responsible. Those are the facts. Elara felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt slightly, and she grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. This was insane. He was insane. She was about to marry a man who'd just casually admitted to patricide over whiskey, like they were discussing the weather. Why? The word came out strangled. Why would you— That, Dominic said quietly, is a longer answer, and one I won't give you today. You can't just— I can. He set down his glass. You asked if I killed him. I told you the truth. The reasons are mine. She stared at him, searching his face for any sign of emotion, remorse, satisfaction, anything. Found nothing but that same terrible control. What about your last betrothed? She demanded. Lady Catherine? She disappeared. She left. His voice hardened slightly. Of her own accord, with a man she'd been seeing secretly for months. I helped arrange her passage to France and provided enough money to ensure she'd be comfortable. The rumors of her disappearance were— encouraged by those who wish to damage my reputation. That's convenient. It's true. He met her gaze levelly. Believe it or not as you choose. Elara wanted to scream, wanted to throw something to crack that infuriating calm. Instead, she straightened her spine and lifted her chin. I could leave, she said. Right now. Walk out that door and never come back. You could. He didn't move. Your father's debts would remain. The creditors would strip your family estates within the month. Your mother's grave would be on land you no longer own. A pause. But, yes, you could leave. It was the cruelest kindness she'd ever heard, laying out the consequences without quite threatening her. She hated him for it, hated that he was right. 3 days, she said bitterly. I have 3 days to decide whether I'm brave enough to condemn my family or foolish enough to marry a killer. Yes. Something that might have been regret crossed his face, too quick to be sure. I'm sorry. Are you? More than you know. He turned away then, back to the window and his view of the rain-soaked grounds. Dismissed. She'd been dismissed. Elara left before the fury building in her chest could turn into tears. Her room was in the east wing, up 2 flights of stairs and down another labyrinth of corridors. A maid had been waiting to show her the way, a girl about Elara's age with a pinched, nervous face and hands that wouldn't stop twisting in her apron. Is there anything you need, miss? The girl asked, voice barely above a whisper. I can have a bath drawn, or bring tea, or… What's your name? The maid blinked. Jenny, miss. How long have you worked here, Jenny? 3 months, miss. She wouldn't quite meet Elara's eyes. I came after the last girl left. The last girl? She didn't know… That is, she only stayed a week. Said the house made her nervous, so… Jenny bit her lip. But I need the position, miss. My family needs the wages. Ah. So Dominic employed people too desperate to refuse. Practical, if ruthless. I'll take tea, Elara said finally. Thank you. Jenny fled with obvious relief. Elara waited until her footsteps had faded before allowing herself to collapse onto the bed. The room was actually nice, better than she'd expected. Someone had made an effort here. Fresh flowers on the vanity, despite the season. Thick curtains to keep out the drafts. A writing desk positioned to catch the light from the windows, stocked with good paper and ink. The bed itself was enormous, piled with enough pillows and quilts to sleep 6 people. Thoughtful touches, all of them, which somehow made everything worse. She pressed her hands to her face and tried to think. 3 days. She had 3 days to figure out if the man she was about to marry was a monster or just playing one. A knock at the door made her sit up. Come in. But it wasn't Jenny returning with tea. It was an older woman, steel gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, dressed in black from collar to hem. She had the bearing of someone used to authority and the eyes of someone who'd seen too much to be easily fooled. Miss Whitcomb, I'm Mrs. Hartley, the housekeeper. I wanted to ensure you had everything you needed. I'm fine, thank you. Mrs. Hartley didn't leave. She stood in the doorway, studying Elara with an expression that might have been pity or calculation. You seem like a sensible girl, she said finally. I'm about to marry a duke who admits to murder. Sensible might not be the word. A ghost of a smile touched the housekeeper's mouth. Fair enough. She stepped fully into the room and closed the door behind her. May I speak plainly? Elara gestured for her to continue. At this point, what did she have to lose? The duke is not an easy man, Mrs. Hartley said carefully. He's been shaped by circumstances that would break most people. What you've heard about him, some of it is true. Some of it is exaggeration. Some is outright fabrication. Which parts? That's not for me to say. The housekeeper's expression softened slightly. But I will tell you this. I've been with this household for 30 years. I watched Dominic Ravencroft grow up. And whatever else he may be, he's never been deliberately cruel. Not to anyone who didn't deserve it. His father deserved it? His father, Mrs. Hartley said flatly, was a vicious drunk who beat his wife and terrorized his son for years. So yes, he deserved it. The bluntness of it stole Elara's breath. Mrs. Hartley held her gaze, unflinching. I'm not asking you to forgive anything, the housekeeper continued. I'm not even asking you to stay. But if you do stay, if you marry him, try to see past the rumors. Try to see the man himself. She left before Elara could form a response. The tea arrived a few minutes later. Elara drank it mechanically, mind spinning. A vicious drunk. Beatings. Terror. Was that supposed to make it better? Did an abused child become justified in murder when he grew up? She didn't know. Couldn't know. The ethical calculus was beyond her. What she did know was this. Dominic Ravencroft had the power to save her family or ruin them completely. And in 3 days she would become his wife, for better or worse. The rain kept falling. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed the hour. Elara set down her teacup and went to the window, pressing her palm against the glass. Below, the ground stretched out into gray mist and shadow. In 3 days, this would be her home. In 3 days, she would belong to a killer. The question was, could she survive long enough to figure out if that made him a monster or just a man? Dinner was an exercise in psychological warfare disguised as polite society. The dining room was less forbidding than the rest of the house, smaller, with warm wood paneling and a fire that actually threw heat. But the table itself was massive, stretching for what felt like miles, with Elara seated at one end and Dominic at the other, like they were negotiating a treaty rather than sharing a meal. Her father sat between them, desperately trying to fill the silence with small talk. Excellent venison, Your Grace. Truly exceptional. You must have an excellent gamekeeper. Dominic cut his meat with precise, economical movements. I do my own hunting. Ah, yes. Commendable. A duke who isn't afraid of physical pursuits. Her father laughed nervously. Very admirable. Elara pushed food around her plate and tried not to scream. Across the vast expanse of table, Dominic ate in silence, apparently unbothered by the awkwardness. Of course he was unbothered. He probably didn't feel awkwardness. Probably didn't feel much of anything. Your Grace, her father tried again. I wanted to thank you again for your generosity regarding the financial arrangements. Most generous. It was equitable. Yes, well, quite. Another painful pause. And the wedding. 3 days seems rather quick, but I'm sure you have your reasons. I prefer not to prolong unnecessary situations. Elara's knife scraped against her plate. Both men looked at her. She smiled sweetly. Unnecessary situations. Is that what I am? Her father went pale. Elara, please. No, I'm curious. She set down her silverware with exaggerated care. Because it seems to me that if something is unnecessary, one might simply not do it. Yet, here we are. Dominic's expression didn't change, but she caught the slightest tightening around his eyes. I misspoke. I meant unnecessary delays. Ah, so you're eager then. How flattering. Elara. Her father looked like he might have an apoplexy. Apologize at once. For what? Clarifying the Duke's intentions? She turned her full attention to Dominic. Do tell, Your Grace, what exactly are your intentions? The silence that followed was deafening. Even the servants seemed to freeze, caught between their duties and the sudden tension crackling through the air. Dominic set down his glass with deliberate slowness. When he spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. My intentions, Miss Whitcomb, are to honor the agreement I made with your father, to provide for you financially and ensure your family's debts are settled in full, to offer you the protection of my name and whatever comfort this household can provide. He paused. Beyond that, I have no expectations. No expectations, she laughed, sharp and bitter. How very magnanimous. It's honest. Is it? Or is it just another way of saying you have no interest in an actual marriage? Just a transaction, a business arrangement. Would you prefer I lie about that too? Her father made a strangled noise. Elara ignored him, leaning forward. I'd prefer you treat me like a human being instead of a problem to be managed. Dominic's jaw tightened. For a moment, just a moment, she saw something beneath that iron control. Anger, maybe, or frustration. Then it was gone, locked away again. You're right, he said quietly. I apologize. The apology caught her completely off guard. She'd been bracing for a fight, for coldness, for anything but capitulation. What? You're right, he repeated. This situation is not of your choosing. You deserve better than to be spoken of as a transaction. He stood, and the servants immediately moved to pull out his chair. If you'll excuse me, I have correspondence to attend to. Please, finish your meal." He left. Just like that, swept out of the room without a backward glance, leaving Elara and her father staring after him in shocked silence. "What?" her father said slowly. "In the name of everything holy was that?" Elara discovered she was shaking. "I don't know. You can't speak to him like that. He's a duke. He could—" Her father cut himself off, but the implication hung in the air anyway. He could what? Kill her? Was that where the sentence had been going? "I'm going to bed," Elara said abruptly. She stood, abandoning her barely touched meal. "Excuse me." She made it to her room before the shaking turned into something more. Sank down onto the edge of the bed and pressed her hands over her mouth to keep the sob from escaping. What was she doing? What the hell was she doing, picking fights with a man who'd admitted to murder? She should be meek, compliant, trying to make the best of an impossible situation. Instead, she was needling him, pushing him, practically daring him to show his true nature. Except he hadn't. That was the thing that kept nagging at her. He'd gotten angry. She'd seen it in his eyes. But he hadn't lashed out, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't done anything except apologize and leave. A vicious drunk who beat his wife and terrorized his son. Mrs. Hartley's words echoed in her mind. If that was true, if Dominic had grown up watching his father hurt his mother, then maybe walking away was the most significant thing he could have done. Maybe it meant he'd learned not to become the monster he'd been raised by. Or maybe she was making excuses for him, looking for reasons to believe he wasn't as dangerous as everyone said. A knock at the door interrupted her spiral. "Not now, Jenny." "It's not Jenny." Elara froze. That was Dominic's voice, muffled through the wood. What was he doing here? It was completely improper. They weren't married yet, and even then, showing up at her bedroom door unannounced was... She opened the door. He stood in the hallway, still in his dinner clothes, expression unreadable. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I owe you a better apology," he said finally. "May I come in?" Every instinct screamed at her to say no, to maintain some boundary, some scrap of propriety. Instead, she stepped back and let him enter. He didn't go far, just a few feet past the threshold, maintaining a careful distance. She noticed that. Noticed how he kept his hands visible, his posture non-threatening, like he was trying not to scare her. "I handled dinner poorly," Dominic said, "and the conversation in my study earlier. You're in an impossible position, and I've done nothing to make it easier." "No," Elara agreed quietly. "You haven't." He nodded, accepting that. "I'm not good at this. At people. I've spent most of my adult life deliberately keeping others at a distance." His mouth twisted slightly. "The rumors help with that. Some of which you've encouraged." "Yes." "Why?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He was quiet for a moment, and she could almost see him deciding how much to tell her. "Because," he said eventually, "it's easier to be feared than to be vulnerable. Fear keeps people away, keeps them from getting close enough to—" He stopped abruptly. "Close enough to what?" But he shook his head. "That's not an answer I can give you yet." "More secrets?" "Yes." No apology this time, just acknowledgement. "But I will tell you this. Whatever happens between us, I will not hurt you. I swear that on whatever honor I have left." Elara studied his face, searching for deception, found only that same terrible sincerity. "Your honor," she said slowly, "which includes admitting to murder." "Yes." "That's not as reassuring as you might think." A muscle jumped in his jaw. "No, I suppose it isn't." They stood there in the flickering lamplight, the rain still drumming against the windows, two strangers bound by debt and desperation trying to figure out how to survive each other. 3 days, Elara said finally. "We have 3 days before this becomes permanent. Can you at least tell me why? Why marry at all? You don't need the money. You clearly don't want a wife, so why go through with it?" Dominic's gaze drifted to the window, to the darkness beyond. When he spoke, his voice was so quiet she had to strain to hear it. "Because I'm tired," he said, "of being alone, of being the monster in everyone's stories, of having nothing in this house but silence and ghosts." He looked back at her. "Your father's proposal offered a solution. A wife who would have no illusions about what this marriage is, who wouldn't expect love or romance or anything I can't give." A pause. "I thought it would be easier that way. cleaner. And now? Now I'm realizing I may have miscalculated. Despite everything, despite the fear and anger and confusion, Elara almost laughed. There was something painfully honest about the admission, something human. You definitely miscalculated, she told him. I'm not going to be a quiet, convenient wife who asks no questions and makes no demands. I'm beginning to understand that. Good. She crossed her arms. So if we're doing this, if I'm actually going to marry you, then I need something from you. Name it. Honesty. No more half-truths or evasions. If I ask you something, you tell me the truth. Even if it's ugly, especially if it's ugly. Dominic was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly, he nodded. Agreed. On one condition. What? You ask. I won't volunteer information about my past. There are parts of it I've spent years trying to bury. But if you ask directly, I'll answer truthfully. His eyes met hers. Is that acceptable? It wasn't, not really, but it was more than she'd had before. For now, Elara said. He inclined his head, a gesture that was almost formal. Then he moved toward the door, and she thought he was leaving, but he paused with his hand on the frame. For what it's worth, he said without turning, I'm sorry that you're here, that circumstances have made this necessary. You deserve better than to be bartered away to someone like me. Before she could respond, he was gone. Elara stared at the closed door for a long time after he'd left. Then she went to her writing desk, pulled out a sheet of paper, and began to write. She didn't know who she was writing to. There was no one who could help her, no one she could confide in. But she needed to get the thoughts out of her head before they drove her mad. He's not what I expected, she wrote. I thought he'd be cruel, or cold, or obviously monstrous, but he's just controlled. Like he's keeping something locked down so tight it might shatter him if it ever got out. Mrs. Hartley says his father was a drunk who beat his mother. If that's true, then what he did... She stopped, crossed out the last line. Tried again. I don't know if I can trust him, but I also don't know if I can afford not to. In 3 days, I'll be his wife. And I still don't know if that makes me the bravest person I know or the biggest fool. The clock on the mantel struck midnight. Elara set down her pen and went to the window one last time. Somewhere in the house, Dominic Ravencroft was alone with his ghosts and secrets. And in 3 days, he would be her husband. She pressed her forehead against the cold glass and wondered if either of them would survive what came next. Morning came gray and unwelcome. Elara woke to find Jenny already in her room, laying out clothes she hadn't asked for. His Grace requests your presence at breakfast, the maid said, not quite meeting her eyes. In the conservatory, 8 o'clock. Elara glanced at the clock. 7:30. And if I decline? Jenny's hand stilled on the dress she was smoothing. I don't know, miss. No one's ever declined before. No one? The Duke doesn't make many requests. The girl's voice dropped to almost a whisper. When he does, people tend to listen. Of course they did. Because he was a duke. Because he was dangerous. Because the world had taught people that men like Dominic Ravencroft didn't hear the word no very often. Well, he was about to start hearing it. Tell His Grace I'll join him at 9, Elara said. If that's inconvenient, he can eat without me. Jenny looked like she might faint. But miss, 9 o'clock, Jenny. Not a minute earlier. The maid fled. Elara dressed slowly, deliberately, choosing the simplest gown in the wardrobe and leaving her hair in a loose braid instead of the elaborate style Jenny had clearly been instructed to create. Small rebellions, maybe. Petty ones. But they were hers. She arrived at the conservatory at 9:15. Dominic was still there, seated at a small table surrounded by glass walls and climbing vines. He'd been reading some leather-bound book that he set aside when she entered, and his expression gave away nothing. Miss Whitcomb, good morning. Your Grace. She sat without waiting for an invitation. I hope I didn't keep you waiting. Not at all. He poured her tea with steady hands. I appreciate you joining me. The politeness was almost worse than hostility would have been. At least hostility would have been honest. What did you want to discuss? Elara asked bluntly. Dominic passed her the teacup. I thought we should talk about the wedding. There are arrangements to finalize. I'm sure you have everything well in hand. Some decisions require your input. Do they? Or are you just being polite? Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, maybe, or annoyance. You really don't intend to make this easy, do you? Why should I? She took a sip of tea. It was perfect, of course. Exactly how she liked it, which meant he'd been paying attention. That bothered her more than it should have. You've made it clear this is a transaction, so let's treat it like one. You tell me what you need from me, I'll tell you my terms, and we'll negotiate from there. Dominic leaned back in his chair, studying her. The morning light caught the sharp angles of his face, and for just a moment she could see the exhaustion beneath the control. He looked like a man who hadn't slept well in years. All right, he said finally. What are your terms? She'd been prepared for argument, not capitulation. It took her a moment to regroup. I want my own rooms, separate from yours. Already arranged. I want access to funds, not an allowance, actual access. Money that's mine to spend as I see fit. You'll have your own account. I'll have the papers drawn up today. I want... She stopped, thrown by how easily he was agreeing. Are you going to fight me on anything? Should I? Most men would. I'm not most men. His voice was dry. Or hadn't you noticed? Fair point. She regrouped again. I want to be able to leave. Not permanently, not unless I choose to end the marriage. But I want to be able to visit my family, to travel if I wish, without having to ask your permission every time. Dominic's expression darkened slightly. Within reason. I won't have you gallivanting across Europe with no security and no notice. But yes, you're not a prisoner here. Aren't I? No. The word was flat, final. You're my wife, or you will be. That comes with certain protections and certain freedoms. I have no interest in caging you. Elara wanted to believe him, wanted to take the words at face value and stop looking for the trap. But trusting him felt like stepping off a cliff in the dark. Why? She asked quietly. Why agree to all of this? Most men in your position would just dictate terms. You have all the power here. Power without consent is just tyranny. He picked up his teacup but didn't drink. I've seen enough of that to last a lifetime. I won't become it. The bitterness in his voice was raw, unguarded. It made something in her chest tighten. Before she could respond, the conservatory door burst open. A man strode in without knocking, tall, elegant, with the kind of aristocratic features that belonged on a coin. He was older than Dominic by maybe a decade, dressed in expensive but understated clothes, and he was smiling. It was not a friendly smile. Dominic, they told me you were hiding in here with your little bride. How rude of you not to introduce us. Dominic had gone very still. Lord Halverston, I wasn't aware you were in the area. Weren't you? Halverston's gaze slid to Elara, and she felt the weight of it like something physical. Assessing, calculating. I heard about the wedding, of course. Thought I should come offer my congratulations in person. How thoughtful. Dominic's voice could have frozen water. Unfortunately, we're in the middle of a private conversation. Oh, I'm sure Miss Whitcomb won't mind a brief interruption. Will you, my dear? Elara opened her mouth, but Dominic cut her off. She will. As will I. If you'll excuse us. Still so protective. Halverston pulled out a chair and sat without invitation. Some things never change. Tell me, Miss Whitcomb, has my dear friend told you how we know each other? Lord Halverston. We grew up together, you see, practically brothers. I watched him evolve from a scared little boy into the man he is today. The smile widened. It's been quite a transformation. The air in the conservatory felt wrong, too thick, too charged. Elara glanced between them. Dominic's face had gone completely blank, but his hands were white-knuckled on the armrests. That's fascinating, she said carefully. But His Grace is right. We were in the middle of something. Of course. Of course. I won't intrude long. Halverston leaned forward conspiratorially. I just wanted to make sure you knew what you were getting into. Marrying into the Ravencroft family is complicated. There's so much history, so many secrets. Enough. Dominic stood abruptly. You've delivered your message. Now leave. Message? I'm simply catching up with an old friend and meeting his charming fiancée. But Halverston stood as well, still smiling that awful smile. Though I suppose I should warn you, Miss Whitcomb, Ravencroft men have a rather poor track record with their wives. Dominic's mother, for instance. Such a tragic story. Get out! Elara had never heard that tone from Dominic before. It was utterly devoid of emotion, flat and final as a grave. Halverston's smile faltered slightly. Now, Dominic, if you're not out of this house in the next 5 minutes, I will have you thrown out, physically, and I'll enjoy watching. For a long moment, the two men stared at each other. Then Halverston laughed, a brittle, unpleasant sound. Always so dramatic. Very well, I'll go. But do think about what I said, Miss Whitcomb, about history, about patterns. He headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Dominic, I'll be back for the wedding. Wouldn't miss it for the world. He left. The silence he left behind was deafening. Dominic remained standing, breathing carefully, like he was trying to hold himself together through sheer force of will. Elara watched him and made a decision. Who is he really? She asked. An old family friend, or he was once. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting right now. He turned to face her, and the blankness was back in place. Perfect control restored. I apologize for the interruption. We can continue this discussion later. Don't. Elara stood, moving around the table to stand directly in front of him. Don't do that. Don't shut down and pretend this didn't just happen. Elara, you promised me honesty, so be honest. What did he mean about your mother? Dominic's jaw tightened. That's not... You said if I asked, you'd answer. I'm asking. The muscle in his jaw jumped again. She could see him fighting it, the instinct to deflect, to hide, to keep her at a distance. Then something in his expression shifted. Resignation, maybe. Or exhaustion. My mother killed herself, he said flatly. When I was 15, Halverston is implying I drove her to it. The words hit like a physical blow. Elara felt the breath leave her lungs. Did you? No. He met her gaze steadily. But I couldn't save her either, and to some people that's the same thing. Elara's mind was racing. Suicide. His mother. The rumors about his father's death suddenly took on a different shape entirely. Your father, she said slowly. The one you said you killed. When did he die? The same night. Oh. She didn't kill herself, Elara breathed. You're protecting her. You took the blame for his death to protect her memory. Dominic's face might as well have been carved from stone. That's an interesting theory. It's the truth, isn't it? Your father was abusive. Mrs. Hartley all but confirmed it. Your mother killed him to protect you, and then she... Elara stopped, the full horror of it settling in. And you've let everyone think you're a murderer rather than let them know what really happened. You're speculating. Am I wrong? Silence. Long and heavy and damning. No, Dominic said finally, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. You're not wrong. Elara sank back into her chair. Her legs had suddenly stopped working properly. Why? The word came out strangled. Why would you do that to yourself? Let everyone think you're a monster. Let the rumors destroy your reputation. Because the truth would have destroyed hers. His voice was rough now, the control finally cracking. She was already broken, already dying inside. If the world knew what she'd done, even to save me, they would have called her a murderess, a madwoman. They would have said terrible things, and she couldn't defend herself. He turned away. At least this way, her name stays clean. People remember her as the tragic duchess who married the wrong man, not as a killer. But I can bear it. She couldn't. Simple as that. Final as that. Elara stared at his back, at the rigid line of his shoulders, and felt something crack open in her chest. This man, this supposedly cruel, ruthless duke, had sacrificed everything to protect his dead mother's reputation, had taken on the weight of patricide, had let himself be feared and hated and isolated, all so she could be remembered kindly. It was possibly the most heartbreaking thing she'd ever heard. Halverston knows, she said. Halverston suspects. He was there that night, heard the argument, saw the aftermath, but he can't prove anything. And now he's threatening you with it. Dominic laughed, bitter and sharp. Halverston has been threatening me with various things for years. It's practically his hobby. Why? Because... He stopped himself, shook his head. That's a different story, one I'm not ready to tell yet. She wanted to push, wanted to demand the whole truth, all of it, everything he was still hiding, but she could see the exhaustion in every line of his body, the cost of what he'd already revealed. All right, she said quietly. But Dominic? Thank you for telling me. He didn't turn around. You asked, I answered. That was the agreement. Still, it matters. He was quiet for a long moment, then, does it change anything, knowing the truth? Did it? Elara turned the question over in her mind. He'd still been responsible for his father's death, even if indirectly. The violence was still there, still part of his history. But the context changed everything. Yes, she said. It does. How? Ask me after the wedding. He did turn then, surprise flickering across his face. You're still going through with it? Are you having second thoughts? No, but I thought after last night, after Halverston, after learning that you've spent the last decade protecting your mother's memory at the cost of your own reputation? Elara shook her head. If anything, that makes me more certain. You realize that makes no sense. Welcome to my decision-making process. Nothing makes sense anymore. She stood, smoothing her skirts. Now, you said there were wedding arrangements to finalize. Let's finalize them. They spent the next hour going over details that should have been tedious, but somehow weren't. Flowers. Elara wanted something simple, hated roses. Music. She had opinions about the string quartet, most of them negative. The guest list was mercifully short, since Dominic apparently had no friends, and Elara's family consisted of her father and a handful of distant relatives who'd probably only show up for the free food. What about your mother's family? Dominic asked, making notes on a piece of paper. Dead or disowned us after she married my father. They thought she was marrying beneath her. Elara's mouth twisted. Turns out they were right. I'm sorry. Don't be. I never knew them. She paused. What about yours? You said Halverston was a family friend. Anyone else who should be invited? No. The flatness of it was almost funny. No one? No cousins, uncles, childhood friends? The Ravencroft family tree is more of a withered branch at this point. And my childhood friends... He stopped, jaw tightening. Let's just say I'm not on speaking terms with most of them. Because of the rumors. Because of the truth. He set down his pen. People don't like uncertainty. When my father died and my mother followed, society needed a villain. I gave them one. And people who'd been friendly suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Except Halverston. Halverston stayed because he saw an opportunity. He's not a friend. He's a vulture, circling a dying animal. The venom in his voice was startling. Elara leaned forward. What does he want from you? Power. Influence. Control. Dominic's expression was grim. My family has connections, resources, land that he covets. If he can prove I'm unstable, dangerous, he can petition to have me declared unfit and take control of the estate through various legal maneuvers. That's why the marriage, Elara said slowly, pieces clicking together. A wife legitimizes you, makes you look stable, responsible, harder to declare incompetent. Partially, but I meant what I said earlier. I'm tired of being alone. The strategic benefits were just a bonus. She believed him. That was the strange part. After everything, all the secrets and half-truths, she actually believed him. He's going to try to stop the wedding, Elara said. I know. What will he do? I don't know. Dominic met her gaze. But it will be public, designed to humiliate, and probably involve revealing some truth about my past that I'd rather keep hidden. That's his pattern. Have you considered just telling me everything now? Taking away his ammunition? A ghost of a smile crossed Dominic's face. You really don't give up, do you? Not when I'm about to legally bind myself to someone who's apparently under siege by a vindictive aristocrat with a grudge. No. The smile faded. Fair enough. But some stories, they're not just mine to tell. Other people are involved. Revealing everything would hurt them. Who? People I owe protection to. People who trusted me. He stood, began pacing. Halverston knows this. He knows I won't defend myself if it means exposing them, so he uses it. Has been using it for years. Elara watched him move, restless energy barely contained. She was starting to understand the control now. It wasn't coldness, it was necessity. A man who'd learned early that losing control meant people got hurt. Then we don't give him an opening, she said. Dominic stopped pacing. What? The wedding is in 2 days. Whatever Halverston is planning, he'll do it then. Maximum audience, maximum damage. So we prepare, we anticipate, and we don't let him win. Elara, you don't understand what you're suggesting. If Halverston goes public with certain information, then we go public first. On our own terms. I just told you. No, listen. She stood, moved toward him. You're trying to protect other people's secrets. I understand that. But maybe they don't need protecting the way you think they do. Maybe the truth, told carefully, is less damaging than whatever twisted version Halverston is planning to unleash. Dominic stared at her like she'd suggested they burn down the house. You're serious. Completely. Look, I spent the last year watching my father hide his debts, pretend everything was fine, and slowly drown under the weight of secrets. It didn't help. It made everything worse. She took a breath. I'm not saying you broadcast every detail to the world, but your closest circle, the people who will be at that wedding, maybe they deserve to know the truth before Halverston twists it into something ugly. And if they use it against me, will they? Really? Elara challenged. Or are you assuming the worst because it's safer than hoping for the best? He didn't answer, just stood there, something working in his expression that she couldn't quite read. The door to the conservatory opened again. This time it was Mrs. Hartley, looking grim. Your Grace. Miss Whitcomb. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's been a development. Dominic's expression shuddered immediately. What kind of development? The housekeeper held out a sealed letter. This arrived by courier 10 minutes ago, for Miss Whitcomb. Elara took it, turned it over. No return address, just her name written in elegant, unfamiliar handwriting. She broke the seal. The letter was short. She read it twice, each time feeling the blood drain further from her face. What is it? Dominic asked sharply. Wordlessly, she handed it to him. His eyes scanned the page. She watched his expression go from concern to furious in the span of 3 seconds. Who sent this? He demanded. It's not signed. Elara's voice sounded distant to her own ears. But I can guess. The letter was simple enough. Miss Whitcomb, before you bind yourself to Dominic Ravencroft, you should know the full truth about his previous engagement. Lady Catherine Merrill did not leave willingly, no matter what lies he's told you. I have proof of her correspondence, dated after her supposed departure, expressing fear and pleading for help. She hasn't been seen since. If you value your life, you will end this farce of an engagement immediately. A friend. Halverston, Dominic bit out. Is it true? Elara asked. Her voice was steady. She was proud of that. Any of it? Catherine left. I helped her leave. That part is true. And the letters? If they exist, they're forgeries. Catherine was many things, but she wasn't afraid of me. He crumpled the letter in his fist. This is exactly what I was talking about. Halverston manufactures evidence, spreads lies, and by the time the truth comes out, the damage is done. Then we find Catherine. We get her to testify. She's in France, or was, last I heard. It would take weeks to... So we have a choice. Elara cut him off. We cancel the wedding and let Halverston win, or we go through with it and deal with whatever he throws at us. Elara, if these rumors spread, if people believe I harmed Catherine, you'll be painted as either a victim or a fool. Your reputation will be destroyed along with mine. My reputation was destroyed the moment my father sold me to settle his debts. She lifted her chin. At least this way, I get to choose what I'm destroyed for. Dominic looked at her like he'd never seen her before. You're insane. Probably. But I'm also the woman who's going to marry you in 2 days, so you might want to get used to it. Mrs. Hartley cleared her throat. If I may, Your Grace, there's something else. What now? Lord Halverston has taken rooms at the inn in the village. He's been talking to anyone who'll listen. The housekeeper's expression was troubled. By tomorrow, half the county will have heard his version of events. Dominic swore. It was sharp and vicious and utterly unlike his usual control. He paced to the window, staring out at the grounds with his shoulders rigid. Elara made a decision. Mrs. Hartley, Can you gather the household staff? Everyone who will be working during the wedding? The housekeeper blinked. Yes, Miss Whitcomb, but why? Because they're going to hear the rumors too, and I'd rather they hear the truth first. Elara, Dominic turned from the window. You can't be serious. Watch me. She faced him squarely. You said you can bear the weight of the rumors. Fine. But you don't have to bear it alone anymore. I'm here. I'm choosing to be here. And I'm choosing to fight. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I agreed to marry you. So either you let me help, or you spend the next 2 days watching Halverston dismantle everything while you maintain your noble silence. She crossed her arms. Your choice. The silence stretched. Mrs. Hartley looked between them, wisely staying quiet. Finally, Dominic spoke. If we do this, if we start telling the truth, there's no taking it back. Once it's out there, we can't control how people react. I know. They might not believe us, might think we're just spinning new lies. I know that too. And Halverston will escalate. He'll dig deeper, bring up things that... Dominic stopped, jaw working. Things that will hurt people I care about. Then we warn them first. Give them the chance to prepare. He studied her for a long moment. She could see him weighing options, calculating risks, trying to find a path that didn't end in disaster. You really want to do this? He asked finally. I really do. Why? You barely know me. You owe me nothing. Elara thought about that. About fear and secrets and the weight of carrying everything alone. About a man who'd spent a decade protecting his dead mother at the cost of his own happiness. Because you deserve better than this, she said quietly. And because I'm tired of watching powerful men win by making everyone else afraid. Something shifted in Dominic's expression. Something that might have been hope, if hope hadn't been beaten out of him years ago. All right, he said, we'll do it your way. But Elara, if this goes wrong, then it goes wrong and we deal with it. She held out her hand. Together. He looked at her hand like it was a foreign object. Then slowly, he reached out and took it. His palm was warm, calloused, and when his fingers closed around hers, she felt the slight tremor he was trying to hide. Together, he repeated, like he was testing the word, like he didn't quite believe it. Mrs. Hartley was smiling, just barely, but definitely smiling. I'll gather the staff, she said. Give you an hour to prepare what you want to say. Thank you, Mrs. Hartley. The housekeeper left. Elara and Dominic stood there, hands still clasped, the morning light streaming through the conservatory glass. This is a terrible idea, Dominic said. Probably. Halverston is going to make us regret it. Almost certainly. And we're doing it anyway. Elara squeezed his hand. We're doing it anyway. For the first time since she'd met him, Dominic Ravencroft smiled. It was small, tentative, and didn't quite reach his eyes. But it was real. You know, he said, I'm starting to think this marriage might actually work. Don't get ahead of yourself. We haven't made it to the altar yet. The smile faded. No, we haven't. And somewhere in the village, Lord Halverston was sharpening his knives. They gathered the staff in the servants' hall an hour later. 23 people in total, housekeepers, footmen, kitchen workers, gardeners. They filed in looking nervous, exchanging glances, probably wondering if they were all about to be sacked. Elara stood beside Dominic at the front of the room and tried to ignore the way her stomach was twisting itself into knots. This had seemed like a good idea in the conservatory. Now, facing actual people who would judge them, who could spread whatever they heard across the entire county by nightfall, she was less certain. Dominic's hand found hers under cover of her skirts. Brief pressure, then gone. But it steadied her. Thank you all for coming, he began. His voice carried authority but less coldness than usual. I know this is irregular, but Miss Whitcomb and I wanted to speak with you before the wedding, to address some rumors that are circulating. A ripple went through the assembled staff. Jenny, standing near the back, looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. By now you've probably heard that Lord Halverston is in the village, Dominic continued, and that he's been talking, spreading stories about my past, about my character, about Miss Whitcomb's safety in this household. Mrs. Hartley stepped forward. Your Grace, none of us believe... Some of what he's saying is true, Dominic cut her off. The room went dead silent. Elara watched their faces, shock, confusion, fear. This was the moment. Either they'd listen or they'd run. My father died violently when I was 15, Dominic said. That part is true. What Lord Halverston is implying, that I killed him in cold blood, is not. My mother was the one who ended his life. I took the blame to protect her memory. Someone gasped. Elara couldn't tell who. My father was a drunk and an abuser. Dominic went on, each word careful and deliberate. He hurt my mother for years. The night he died, he came at her with a fireplace poker. She defended herself. Then his voice hitched slightly. She couldn't live with what she'd done, even though it was self-defense, even though she'd saved both our lives. So she took her own life that same night. The silence was suffocating. Elara could hear someone crying quietly. I let the world think I was a murderer because the alternative was letting them destroy her name. I've carried that weight for 12 years. And I'd carry it for 12 more if it meant she could rest in peace. He stopped. Looked around the room at faces that were no longer shocked, just sad. Heartbroken, some of them. Lord Halverston knows parts of this story, Dominic said, but he doesn't know all of it. And what he does know, he'll twist. He'll make it sound like I'm dangerous, unstable, a threat to Miss Whitcomb and to anyone who works for me. His jaw tightened. I won't force any of you to stay. If you want to leave, you can, with full references and 2 months' wages. I won't think less of you. Your Grace. It was one of the older footmen, a man named Thomas, who'd been with the household for decades. Permission to speak freely? Granted. Your father was a bastard. Begging your pardon for the language, but it's the truth. We all knew it, and your mother... His voice cracked. She was the kindest lady I ever served. If she did what you say she did, then she had damn good reason. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Elara felt some of the tension in her shoulders ease. Thank you, Thomas, Dominic said quietly. The thing is, Your Grace, Thomas continued, most of us already figured it was something like that. We're not stupid. We know the difference between a man who's cruel and a man who's just... He struggled for words. Haunted. More murmurs. Jenny was nodding, tears streaming down her face. Mrs. Hartley cleared her throat. If I may, Your Grace, I think what Thomas is trying to say is that we're with you. Whatever Lord Halverston tries to do, whatever lies he spreads, we know the truth now, and we'll stand by it. The room erupted in agreement, people talking over each other, voices raised in support. Elara felt something loosen in her chest that she hadn't realized was strangling her. Dominic looked stunned. Thank you, all of you. There's one more thing, Elara said, raising her voice to be heard. The room quieted. Lord Halverston has also spread rumors about Lady Catherine Merrill, the Duke's former betrothed. The atmosphere shifted immediately. Elara could feel the suspicion creeping back in. He's claiming she didn't leave willingly, that she was afraid, that she's missing. Elara held their gazes. Those are lies. Lady Catherine left of her own accord with a man she loved to start a new life in France. His Grace helped arrange her passage and gave her money to start over. Then why not just say so? Someone called from the back. Because it would have ruined her, Dominic answered. Breaking an engagement is scandalous enough. Breaking one to run away with a merchant's son? Society would have destroyed her. At least this way she got to disappear quietly. And the letters Lord Halverston claims to have, Thomas asked? Forgeries, or taken out of context. Dominic's voice hardened. Catherine was unhappy here. I won't lie about that. She didn't love me, and I didn't love her. But she wasn't afraid. And she's alive and well in Marseille, last I heard. Can you prove it? Mrs. Hartley asked. I can contact her. It will take time, but yes, I can get proof. He paused. The question is whether any of you will believe me until then. The silence that followed was weighted. Elara held her breath. Then Jenny stepped forward. I believe you, Your Grace. One by one, the others echoed her. Not all of them. A few remained silent, doubt clear on their faces. But most spoke up. It was enough. Thank you, Dominic said again. He sounded tired. The wedding is in 2 days. If Lord Halverston or anyone else approaches you with questions, you're under no obligation to answer them. But if you do choose to speak, I hope you'll tell the truth as you know it. We will, Your Grace. Mrs. Hartley's voice was firm. You can count on that. The meeting broke up slowly. staff filing out in small groups, talking in hushed voices. Elara caught fragments of conversation, sympathy, anger at Halverston, determination to protect the Duke. It wasn't universal support, but it was more than she'd hoped for. When the room had emptied, except for her and Dominic and Mrs. Hartley, Elara finally let herself slump against the wall. "That went better than expected," she said. "It went better than it had any right to," Dominic corrected. He looked exhausted, like the confession had taken years off his life. "But it's only the first step. Halverston isn't going to stop because the household staff knows the truth." "No," Mrs. Hartley agreed. "But it means when he tries to turn them against you, he'll fail. That's worth something." "Is it enough?" Dominic asked. None of them had an answer. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Elara tried to focus on wedding preparations, approving flower arrangements, reviewing the menu, all the mundane details that seemed absurd given the circumstances. But it gave her something to do other than worry. Dominic had disappeared into his study to write letters. To Catherine, Elara assumed. To anyone else who might be able to provide evidence against Halverston's claims. Her father was conspicuously absent, hiding in his rooms probably, horrified by the scandal brewing around his daughter's wedding. Elara couldn't bring herself to care. By evening, she was exhausted. She'd just sat down for dinner when there was a knock at her door. "Come in." It was Thomas, looking grim. "Miss Whitcomb, His Grace requests your presence in the study." Immediately. Her stomach dropped. "What's wrong?" "He didn't say, miss, but you should come now." She followed him through the darkening corridors. The study door was open. Inside, Dominic stood by his desk, a letter clutched in his hand. His face was white. "What happened?" Elara demanded. Wordlessly, he handed her the letter. It was from Marseille, from Catherine. "Dominic, I received your letter requesting I verify the circumstances of my departure. I wish I could help you. I truly do. But I must refuse. Lord Halverston contacted me 3 weeks ago. He knows about Marcus. He knows where we live, what we've built here, and he's made it very clear what will happen if I testify on your behalf. I'm sorry. You were kind to me when you didn't have to be, but I have a life now, a husband I love. I can't risk losing everything to fight your battles. Please don't contact me again." Catherine Elara read it twice, then looked at Dominic. "He got to her first." "Of course he did." Dominic's voice was hollow. "He's always 3 steps ahead. I should have anticipated this. You couldn't have known." "I should have." The words exploded out of him. He slammed his hand on the desk, making Elara jump. "I knew what he was capable of. I knew he'd go after anyone who could help me, and I still—" He cut himself off, breathing hard. Elara approached carefully. "Dominic, look at me." He didn't move. "Look at me." Slowly, reluctantly, he raised his head. The anguish in his eyes was naked, raw. "This isn't over," Elara said firmly. "So Catherine can't help. We find another way." "There is no other way. She was my proof. Without her testimony, it's just my word against Halverston's lies." He laughed bitterly. "And we both know whose word society will believe." "Then we make them believe us." "How? By what? Sheer force of will? Pretty speeches?" He turned away. "This is exactly what I was trying to avoid. Dragging you into a fight you can't win." "Maybe I can't win, but I can fight." She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. "You told your truth today, to people who needed to hear it. That matters. It matters to 23 servants. It won't matter to the 100 guests who'll be at that wedding. It won't matter when Halverston stands up during the ceremony and accuses me of murdering Catherine." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Is that what you think he'll do?" Elara asked quietly. "It's what I would do, if I were him. Maximum drama, maximum humiliation. And I'll have no defense except a letter from a frightened woman refusing to help me." Elara's mind raced. He was right. Objectively, strategically right. Without Catherine's testimony, they had nothing concrete, just Dominic's word, which was already compromised by years of rumors. "What if we canceled?" she heard herself say. Dominic's head snapped up. "What?" "The wedding. What if we postponed it? Gave ourselves time to find other evidence, to build a real defense?" For a moment, something like hope flickered in his expression. Then it died. "No." "Why not?" "Because Halverston will spin that as proof he's right. The Duke's bride fled before the wedding. Obviously, she believed the rumors. It will be worse than going through with it. But if we go through with it and he makes his accusations public, then we deal with it. Dominic's voice was flat again. Dead. We weather the scandal, we survive, and eventually people move on to the next tragedy. It's not ideal, but it's survivable. That's not a plan. That's just enduring. Welcome to my life. The bitterness in his voice broke her heart. Elara stared at him. This man who'd been carrying impossible weights for so long he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand upright, and made a decision. No, she said. No what? No, we're not doing that. We're not just enduring, we're fighting. She started pacing. There has to be something we can use. Some weakness in Halverston's story, some evidence we haven't thought of. Elara, your mother, when it happened, were there witnesses? Dominic went very still. Why? Because Halverston is claiming you're dangerous, unstable. But if there were witnesses who saw what actually happened that night, who can verify your father attacked first. There was one witness, Dominic said slowly, but I can't use him. Why not? Because he's the one who helped me cover it up. He moved my father's body, helped stage the scene, kept his mouth shut for 12 years. If he comes forward now, he'll be admitting to being an accessory after the fact. He could be prosecuted. Who is he? Dominic hesitated, then, Thomas. Elara's breath caught. The footman? He was there? He was a stable boy back then. Heard the commotion, came running. Saw... Dominic's voice dropped. Everything. My mother with the poker, my father on the ground. Me trying to stop her from... He stopped. And he helped you. He was 16. I was 15. We were children dealing with something neither of us understood. He did what I asked because he trusted me. Dominic's expression was agonized. I can't repay that loyalty by destroying his life. Elara understood. Of course she did. But understanding didn't change the reality of their situation. What if he wanted to help? She asked. What if you gave him the choice? No. Dominic, I said no. His voice was hard, final. I won't put him in that position. I won't make him choose between protecting me and protecting himself. She wanted to argue, wanted to point out that Thomas was a grown man who could make his own decisions, but she could see the wall Dominic had thrown up, the absolute refusal to budge. All right, she said instead. Then we find another way. Before Dominic could respond, there was a commotion in the hallway, raised voices, someone shouting. They both turned toward the door just as it burst open. Lord Halverston stood in the doorway, flanked by two men Elara didn't recognize. He was smiling. Dominic? Miss Whitcomb, I hope I'm not interrupting. You are, Dominic said coldly. And you're trespassing. I thought I made it clear you weren't welcome here. Oh, you did. But you see, I've brought friends. Lord Ashford and Lord Pemberton, members of the peerage who have certain concerns about your fitness to hold your title. He gestured to the men beside him. They've requested a formal audience to discuss these concerns, as is their right under peerage law. Dominic's face went blank. This isn't a formal audience. Isn't it? We're here. You're here. Seems formal enough to me. Halverston strolled into the room like he owned it. Now, shall we discuss the allegations against you? Or would you prefer to do this at the House of Lords with the full peerage watching? Elara's heart was hammering. This was it, the confrontation Dominic had been dreading. And it was happening now, 2 days before the wedding, with witnesses who could ruin everything. What allegations? She demanded. Halverston's smile widened. So many to choose from. Patricide. Driving a young woman to flee in terror. Instability and violence unbecoming of a peer. He pulled out a sheaf of papers. I have testimonies here from Lady Catherine's maid, from villagers who witnessed your volatile temper, from... Those are lies, Elara cut him off. Fabrications. Are they? Then perhaps you can explain why Lady Catherine herself refuses to return to England, why she specifically requested no contact from the Duke. He produced another letter, Catherine's letter, or a copy of it. She's quite clear about her fears. She's clear about wanting to be left alone, Dominic said. That's not the same thing, isn't it? A young woman, isolated in a foreign country, too frightened to even defend her former fiancé? Halverston shook his head. It paints a rather damning picture. Lord Ashford stepped forward. He was older, gray-haired, with the look of someone taking this seriously. Your Grace, these are serious accusations. If there's evidence to refute them, now would be the time to present it. Dominic said nothing. His face was a mask. He has no evidence, Halverston said smoothly, because there is no defense. The truth is simple. Dominic Ravencroft is unstable. He killed his own father. In self-defense, Elara interrupted, after years of abuse. So he claims, but can he prove it? Were there witnesses? The question hung in the air. Elara could feel Dominic's tension radiating from where he stood. There was one witness, she said. Elara, don't... Dominic started. Thomas Redfield, she continued, ignoring him. The head footman. He was there that night. He saw everything. Halverston's smile faltered slightly. A servant's testimony? Hardly credible. More credible than forged letters and paid-off witnesses, Elara shot back. You want the truth? Thomas can provide it. No, Dominic's voice was sharp. Thomas is not part of this. He is if he chooses to be, Elara said. She turned to Lord Ashford. The witness is here in this house. If you want the truth, you can hear it from him directly. This is absurd, Halverston said quickly. A servant coached by the Duke? Then let's ask him. Elara was already moving toward the door. Mrs. Hartley. The housekeeper appeared almost immediately. She'd probably been listening in the hallway. Fetch Thomas, please. Tell him we need him in the study. Elara, stop. Dominic's voice was strained. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm giving you a chance to clear your name. At the cost of destroying his life. That's his choice to make, not yours. They stared at each other. The anger in Dominic's eyes was mixed with something else. Fear, maybe. Or betrayal. Thomas arrived within minutes, looking confused. Your Grace, you asked for me? I didn't, Dominic said flatly. Miss Whitcomb did. Thomas looked between them, clearly sensing the tension. I don't understand. These gentlemen have questions about the night the late Duke died, Elara said. You were there. You know what happened. I think it's time you told the truth. Thomas went pale. Miss Whitcomb, I can't. You can. And you should. She gentled her voice. I know it's asking a lot. I know it could cost you. But if you don't speak now, Lord Halverston wins. And the Duke... She glanced at Dominic. He'll never ask you himself. He'd rather fall on his own sword than risk you. But I'm asking, please. The room was silent. Thomas looked at Dominic, who stood frozen, face carved from stone. Your Grace, Thomas said quietly. What do you want me to do? Dominic's jaw worked. For a long moment he said nothing, then, tell the truth, whatever the consequences. His voice cracked slightly. I'm sorry, Thomas. I'm so sorry. Thomas nodded slowly. Then he turned to Lord Ashford and Lord Pemberton. The old Duke was a violent drunk, he said simply. That night he went after the Duchess with a fireplace poker. Would have killed her if she hadn't defended herself. I heard the screaming, came running from the stables, saw the whole thing. His voice was steady. She hit him once. Just once. And he went down. Then she looked at what she'd done and just broke. And the young Duke? Lord Ashford asked. Tried to save her, talked to her, pleaded with her. But she was already gone, somewhere in her head. She walked up to the tower. Thomas swallowed hard. His Grace asked me to help him move the old Duke's body. Make it look like the son did it instead of the mother, so her name would stay clean. Why would you agree to such a thing? Lord Pemberton demanded. Because I'd watched that woman suffer for years. Watched her fade away while her husband terrorized her and her son. And when she finally fought back, when she finally defended herself, Thomas's voice hardened. She deserved to rest in peace, not be remembered as a murderer. Halverston laughed. This is ridiculous. A servant's sob story. A witness's testimony, Lord Ashford corrected. His expression was thoughtful. Given freely and at great personal risk. He's lying to protect the Duke. Am I? Thomas turned to Halverston. What do I gain from this? I'm admitting to being an accessory to covering up a death. I could go to prison. The only reason I'm speaking now is because Miss Whitcomb is right. The truth matters more than my comfort. Lord Ashford looked at Dominic. Is this true? All of it? Dominic's voice was rough. Every word. Then I've heard enough. Ashford turned to Halverston. These allegations appear to be without merit. The Duke acted to protect his mother's memory from scandal, misguided perhaps, but not malicious. You can't be serious. Halverston's composure was cracking. He admitted to covering up a death that occurred in self-defense 12 years ago, involving parties who are now deceased. Ashford's voice was firm. While irregular, the Duke's actions were motivated by compassion, not malice. I see no reason to pursue this further. Lord Pemberton nodded agreement. Nor I. Halverston's face had gone red. This is absurd. You're letting him. We're letting justice be served, Ashford said coldly, something you seem to have little interest in. Your Grace, Miss Whitcomb, I apologize for the intrusion. I hope your wedding proceeds without further incident. He and Pemberton left. Thomas followed, shooting Dominic an unreadable look on his way out. Halverston stood there, shaking with rage. This isn't over. Yes, Dominic said quietly. It is. You think you've won? You think one testimony from a servant changes anything? Halverston stepped closer. I still have Catherine's letters. I still have witnesses. And when I'm done, everyone will know exactly what you are. What I am, Dominic said, is tired of your games. Get out of my house. Or what? You'll kill me too? Halverston's smile was vicious. Go ahead, prove me right. The tension in the room was suffocating. Elara saw Dominic's hands clench into fists, saw the muscle jumping in his jaw, saw him teetering on the edge of violence. She stepped between them. He won't, she said calmly, because he's better than you, better than your manipulations and your lies and your desperate attempts to destroy someone who's already suffered enough. She met Halverston's eyes. But I will have you arrested for trespassing if you're not gone in the next 60 seconds. Halverston stared at her. Then, slowly, he smiled. You're going to regret this, he said softly. Both of you. He left. The door closed behind him with a soft click that sounded like a death knell. Elara turned to Dominic. He was staring at the door, breathing hard, looking like he might shatter. I can't believe you did that, he said. I'm sorry. I know you didn't want Thomas involved. You forced my hand, used the one person I was trying to protect as ammunition. His voice was shaking. Do you have any idea what you've done? What this could cost him? I saved your reputation, possibly your title. At what price? He rounded on her. Thomas could be prosecuted. He could lose everything because you decided his sacrifice was worth making without asking him first. He made that choice himself. Because you backed him into a corner. Because you made it impossible for him to refuse without looking like a coward. Dominic's control was fracturing. You had no right to make that decision for him. Elara felt something cold settle in her stomach. You're right. I didn't ask. I should have. Yes, you should have. He turned away. I need to check on Thomas. Make sure he understands the legal implications of what he just admitted to. Dominic. Not now, please. He left. Elara stood alone in the study, surrounded by the wreckage of their victory, and wondered if she just won the battle while losing the war. Outside, thunder rumbled. The storm was coming. And somewhere in the village, Halverston was planning his revenge. The storm broke just after midnight. Elara lay in bed listening to rain hammer against the windows and tried not to think about the look on Dominic's face when he'd left the study. Tried not to replay the way his voice had shaken with anger and something worse, disappointment. She'd crossed a line. She knew that. Had known it even as she was doing it, but the alternative had seemed worse. Let Halverston win. Let Dominic shoulder all the blame alone when there was someone who could speak the truth? Except now Thomas was at risk, and Dominic wouldn't even look at her, and the wedding was tomorrow. Today, technically. It was past midnight. She was getting married in less than 18 hours to a man who currently hated her. Perfect. A knock at her door made her sit up. Come in. It was Mrs. Hartley, carrying a tea tray. At midnight. That couldn't be good. I thought you might be awake, the housekeeper said. She set the tray down and poured without asking. Chamomile. It helps. Does it help with guilt? No, but it helps with sleeplessness. Mrs. Hartley handed her the cup. The Duke is in his study. He's been going over legal documents for the past 3 hours trying to find precedents that would protect Thomas. Elara's throat tightened. Of course he is. He's also spoken to Thomas twice, made sure the young man understands he's under no obligation to maintain his testimony, that the Duke will support him regardless of what he chooses to do. And what did Thomas say? That he's not backing down, that he should have spoken up years ago. Mrs. Hartley sat in the chair by the window. He's angry at himself, not at you, though I suspect His Grace hasn't quite grasped that yet. He has every right to be angry with me. I made a decision that wasn't mine to make. You did, Mrs. Hartley agreed. No sugarcoating, which Elara appreciated. But you also did what the Duke couldn't do. You gave Thomas the choice. His Grace would have carried that secret to his grave rather than ask for help. Sometimes the people we're trying to protect need saving from our protection. Elara sipped her tea. It was too hot and scalded her tongue, but she welcomed the distraction. Halverston's not done, she said. No, he's not. The housekeeper's expression was grim. He's been at the inn all evening, drinking, talking, getting angrier by the hour, from what I'm told. Who's telling you this? I have friends in the village. They're concerned. A man like Halverston, drunk and humiliated, that's dangerous. Do you think he'll try something at the wedding? I think he'll try something before the wedding. He can't afford to let it happen. A married duke is harder to discredit than an unmarried one. Mrs. Hartley stood. Which is why I came to tell you something you need to know. Elara set down her cup. What? Halverston and the Duke, their history goes back further than childhood friendship. Halverston's father and the late Duke were business partners. When things went bad, some investment that failed spectacularly, Halverston's father lost everything, blamed the late Duke for the losses. Halverston has been trying to get revenge on the family ever since. By destroying Dominic, by destroying the last Ravencroft, yes. If he can prove the Duke unfit, he can petition the crown to seize the estate. There are debts from his father's partnership that were never fully settled. With the right legal maneuvering, Halverston could claim the entire Ravencroft fortune as restitution. The pieces clicked together. This isn't about the truth. It's about money. It's always about money, Mrs. Hartley said dryly. The vendetta is personal, but the motivation is financial. Halverston is drowning in debt. Taking down the Duke is his only way out. Elara's mind was racing. Does Dominic know this? He knows his father wronged Halverston's family. I doubt he knows the extent of the financial claims. Halverston has kept that quiet, probably saving it for the right moment, which would be tomorrow, at the wedding. Maximum audience, maximum damage. Mrs. Hartley moved toward the door. I thought you should know what you're walking into. If you want to call it off, no one would blame you. Yes, they would, and they'd be right to. Elara stood. Thank you for telling me. And Mrs. Hartley, do you know if my father is still awake? The housekeeper's eyebrows rose. I believe so. He's been pacing his room for hours. Why? Because it's time he and I had a conversation. Her father's room was in the west wing, as far from Dominic's quarters as possible. Coward's geography. Elara didn't bother knocking, just walked in to find him exactly as Mrs. Hartley had described. Pacing, still fully dressed, looking 10 years older than he had that morning. Elara, what are you doing here? It's the middle of the night. I need you to tell me the truth about your debts, she said flatly. He went pale. I don't know what you... Don't lie. Not now. Not anymore. She closed the door behind her. How much do you actually owe? And to whom? That's not your concern. I'm getting married tomorrow to settle those debts. I think it's very much my concern. Her voice cracked. How much, Father? He collapsed into a chair. For a long moment, he just sat there, looking defeated. Then he started talking. The number was worse than she'd imagined. Not just gambling debts, though there were plenty of those. Failed investments. Loans taken against property he didn't own. Money borrowed from people who didn't accept "I'll pay you back eventually" as a business model. Who holds the largest debt? Elara asked when he'd finished. A consortium of creditors. They've banded together, hired a solicitor. If I don't pay by the end of the month, they'll take everything. He looked at her. That's why I accepted Ravencroft's offer. His payment would settle enough to keep the estate. You thought you could sacrifice me and save yourself. I thought I could save our family. His voice rose. Your mother's grave is on that land. Her gardens, her... She's dead, Father. She doesn't care about gardens anymore. The words were cruel but true. You're using her memory to justify selling your daughter. He flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Elara sank onto the edge of the bed. Who's the solicitor? The one representing the creditors? Man named Whitmore, based in London. Why? Because I want to see the actual numbers, the contracts, everything. She met his eyes. And I want you to come with me tomorrow, to the wedding. Stand up there like you actually support this marriage instead of hiding in your room like it's a funeral. Elara, that's my price, Father. You want the Duke's money? You put on your best suit, you walk me down that aisle, and you look happy about it. Understand? He nodded miserably. I understand. Good. She stood. And Father, if you ever gamble again, I'll let the creditors have everything. I don't care if it means losing the estate. Some things aren't worth saving. She left before he could respond. The study was dark except for a single lamp burning on Dominic's desk. He sat behind a wall of legal documents, shirt sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled from running his hands through it. He looked up when she entered, and she saw exhaustion written in every line of his face. You should be sleeping, he said. So should you. She closed the door. How's Thomas? Terrified, brave, refusing to recant. Dominic set down his pen. I found some precedent cases where accessories weren't prosecuted due to extenuating circumstances. It's not much, but it's something. Will it be enough? I don't know. He leaned back in his chair. I've also contacted a barrister in London, someone who specializes in peerage law. He'll be at the wedding tomorrow, just in case Halverston tries to make this official. Elara pulled up a chair. Mrs. Hartley told me about the business partnership between your father and Halverston's. Dominic's expression darkened. Did she? Why didn't you tell me Halverston has a financial claim on your estate? Because it's complicated and possibly invalid, and I was hoping it wouldn't come to that. He rubbed his eyes. My father made a lot of bad decisions. Halverston's father was one of them. But the debts were settled years ago, legally settled. Halverston is trying to reopen the case by claiming fraud, but he'd need to prove my father deliberately sabotaged the investment. Can he? I don't know. My father kept terrible records, and most of the people involved are dead. Dominic's voice was bitter, which is probably why Halverston thinks now is the perfect time to strike. Elara absorbed this. What happens if he succeeds? If he proves fraud? Best case scenario? I lose half the estate. Worst case? Everything goes to his family as restitution, and I'm left with whatever personal assets I can salvage. He met her eyes. Which means the agreement with your father becomes worthless. The debts don't get paid. Her stomach dropped. You knew this. When you made the offer to my father, you knew it might all fall apart. I knew Halverston would try something. I didn't know he'd move this fast. Dominic stood, began pacing. I'm sorry. I should have told you. Should have warned you that marrying me might not solve anything. Why didn't you? Because I'm selfish. Because I wanted... He stopped. Shook his head. It doesn't matter what I wanted. It matters to me. He turned to face her. In the lamplight, his eyes were shadows and gold. I wanted to not be alone, he said quietly. For the first time in 12 years, I wanted to wake up and have someone in this house who chose to be here, who wasn't afraid of me or paid to tolerate me. Just someone. His voice dropped. Even if it was bought, even if it was a lie. I wanted it. The honesty of it was devastating. Elara stood, crossed to where he was standing. It's not a lie, she said. Isn't it? Your father sold you to me. That's the truth. The truth is more complicated than that. She took a breath. I could have said no. Could have run, could have refused, could have found another way. But I didn't. I chose this. Because you had no other option. Because I wanted to see if the rumors were real. If you were actually the monster everyone claimed. She held his gaze. And what I found was someone who's been hurt so badly, he's forgotten how to be anything except alone. Dominic's throat worked. Elara, I'm not going to pretend this is a love match. We both know it isn't. But it's not nothing either. She reached up, touched his face. He went very still. You could have been cruel. You could have used your power to hurt me, to control me, to make this arrangement into something terrible. But you didn't. Every step of the way, you've tried to give me choices, even when it cost you. That's just basic decency. No, it's more than that. She struggled for words. It's proof that you're better than the story everyone's written about you, including the one you've written about yourself. He caught her hand, pressed it against his cheek. His eyes closed. I don't know how to do this, he said. How to let someone in without destroying them. Neither do I, but maybe we figure it out together. When he kissed her, it was gentle, careful, like he was afraid she might break. Elara kissed him back and tasted desperation and hope in equal measure. They broke apart slowly. Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Tomorrow is going to be a disaster, he murmured. Probably. Halverston is going to try to ruin everything. Almost certainly. And we're still doing this. We're still doing this. She pulled back enough to see his face. But we're doing it smart. No more secrets between us. We tell each other everything. And we present a united front. Whatever Halverston throws at us, we face it together. Together, he repeated, like earlier in the conservatory, testing the word. Together, she confirmed. He kissed her again, deeper this time. When they finally separated, Elara's heart was hammering and Dominic's control had cracked enough that she could see the want underneath. You should go, he said roughly, before I do something we'll both regret. Would we regret it? Elara. A warning and a plea. She smiled, stepped back. Fine. But tomorrow night after the wedding, no more separate rooms. His eyes flared. We don't have to. I know we don't have to. I want to. She moved toward the door. Think about that while you're reading your legal documents. She left him standing there looking stunned. Morning came gray but dry. The storm had passed, leaving everything washed clean and smelling of earth and rain. Elara woke to find Jenny already laying out her wedding dress, a simple ivory gown that had belonged to Dominic's mother, altered to fit. Mrs. Hartley thought you'd want this, Jenny said shyly. The late Duchess wore it when she married. His Grace had it brought down from storage. Elara touched the fabric. It was beautiful, understated elegance, nothing ostentatious, exactly what she would have chosen. It's perfect. There's a note. Jenny handed her a folded paper. Inside, in Dominic's precise handwriting, my mother would have liked you. She would have appreciated your courage and your refusal to accept easy lies. I hope wearing this brings you luck today. We'll need it. D. Elara pressed the note to her chest and blinked back tears. The next few hours passed in a blur of preparation. Jenny did her hair, weaving in small white flowers from the conservatory. Mrs. Hartley appeared with jewelry, simple pearls that had also belonged to the late Duchess. Her father showed up, looking uncomfortable in his formal attire, but blessedly sober. You look beautiful, he said gruffly. Don't start drinking at the reception, she replied. He had the grace to look ashamed. At 2:00 they assembled in the entrance hall. The wedding was being held in the manor's chapel, a small stone building on the grounds that could hold maybe 50 people. Most of the guests would be locals, minor nobility, people who'd come out of curiosity more than genuine well-wishes. And Halverston, of course. He'd be there, watching, waiting. Elara took her father's arm and tried to steady her breathing. Last chance to run, he said quietly. Not a chance. They walked through the gardens toward the chapel. The sky was still overcast, but no longer threatening. Inside, she could hear the string quartet playing something she didn't recognize. The doors opened. The chapel was packed, every pew filled, people standing in the back. Elara felt dozens of eyes turn toward her, heard the whispers start. She kept her gaze forward, focused on the altar where Dominic stood waiting. He'd cleaned up since last night, fresh clothes, hair properly styled, looking every inch the Duke. But when he saw her, something in his expression softened. Just for a moment, just enough for her to see it. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm. Each step felt weighted with significance. This was it. No going back after this. Her father gave her hand to Dominic and retreated to the front pew. Dominic's fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. The vicar began the ceremony. Traditional words about love and commitment and joining together. Elara barely heard them. She was too focused on Dominic's face, on the way his thumb was tracing circles on her palm like he needed the reassurance that she was real. "If anyone has objections to this union," the vicar intoned, "speak now or forever hold your peace." The moment stretched. Elara held her breath. Halverston stood. The chapel went silent. "I object," he said clearly, "on the grounds that this marriage is being entered into under false pretenses, and that the Duke of Ravencroft is unfit to make such a commitment." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. The vicar looked flustered. Dominic's hand tightened on Elara's, but his voice was steady. "On what grounds, Lord Halverston?" "On the grounds that you're a murderer, that you've driven at least one woman to flee in terror, that you're mentally unstable and potentially dangerous to Miss Whitcomb." Halverston smiled. "Should I go on?" "Please do," Elara said before Dominic could respond. "I'm fascinated to hear this." Halverston's smile widened. "I have testimony from Lady Catherine's personal maid stating that she witnessed the Duke's violent temper. I have letters from Catherine herself expressing fear, and I have evidence that the Duke's claim of self-defense regarding his father's death is a fabrication." "What evidence?" Dominic asked. "Medical records, showing that your father's injuries were inconsistent with a single defensive blow, that he was struck multiple times, with rage, with intent to kill." Halverston produced papers from his coat. "These were obtained from the physician who examined the body. They tell a very different story than the one you've been selling." Elara felt Dominic go rigid beside her. This was new, something he hadn't anticipated. "Those records are sealed," Dominic said. "They can't be obtained without a court order." "And yet here they are." Halverston's expression was triumphant. "Care to explain the discrepancy, Your Grace? Or would you prefer to admit you've been lying all along?" The chapel erupted in whispers. Elara saw shock and doubt on face after face. This was it, the moment Halverston had been building toward. The perfect trap. Except he'd made one mistake. "May I see those records?" Elara asked. Halverston blinked. "I beg your pardon?" "The medical records. You're using them to make accusations about my future husband. I think I have a right to examine them." "They're technical documents. I can read." She held out her hand. "The records, please." Halverston hesitated, then handed them over. Elara scanned the pages quickly. Medical jargon, descriptions of injuries, notations about the examination, and there, a signature at the bottom. "Dr. Marcus Whitmore." "Interesting," she said. "This doctor, Marcus Whitmore, any relation to the solicitor representing my father's creditors?" Halverston's face went very still. "Actually," Elara continued, her voice carrying through the silent chapel, "I believe Marcus Whitmore is also your cousin. Isn't he, Lord Halverston?" The silence was deafening. "This is absurd," Halverston sputtered. "The relation is irrelevant." "Is it?" "Because it seems rather convenient that the doctor who examined the late Duke just happens to be related to you, and that these supposedly sealed records just happened to become available right before the wedding." Elara turned to address the crowd. "It makes one wonder about the authenticity of the documents and the testimony." She was bluffing, had no idea if the records were forged or not. But she'd hit a nerve. Halverston's composure was cracking. "The records are genuine. Then you won't mind if we verify them, with an independent physician, before this ceremony continues." She handed the papers to Dominic. "Your Grace, do you have someone who could authenticate these?" Dominic's expression was carefully blank, but she could see the understanding in his eyes. "I do. Dr. Pemberton, who's in attendance today. He served as our family physician for decades." An elderly man stood from one of the middle pews. "I'd be happy to examine those records, Your Grace." "This is highly irregular," Halverston protested. "So is interrupting a wedding with forged documents," Elara shot back. "But here we are." Dr. Pemberton made his way to the altar, took the papers, read them slowly. His expression grew grimmer with each page. Finally, he looked up. "These records are falsified," he said clearly. "I was the one who examined the late Duke's body. I never wrote this report. The signature is a forgery, a poor one, and the injuries described here don't match what I observed." The chapel exploded, people shouting questions, Halverston denying everything, the vicar trying to restore order. Elara turned to Halverston. "You forged medical records to try to discredit the Duke. That's a crime, Lord Halverston, a serious one. You can't prove that." "We just did." Dominic's voice cut through the chaos. Dr. Pemberton's testimony will hold up in any court. Your forgery won't. Halverston's face had gone purple with rage. You think this changes anything? You're still a killer. Still... Actually, Thomas's voice rang out from the back of the chapel. I think we've established that His Grace acted in self-defense, as I testified to Lord Ashford and Lord Pemberton yesterday. He walked down the aisle looking nervous but determined. Behind him came Mrs. Hartley, and behind her, to Elara's shock, a dozen staff members from the house. We all know the truth, Thomas continued. We know what the late Duke was. We know what happened that night. And we know His Grace has spent 12 years protecting people who couldn't protect themselves. He stopped in front of Halverston. You can spread all the lies you want. We'll keep telling the truth. This is a farce. Halverston spun to face the crowd. You're all being manipulated, can't you see? What we see, Lord Ashford said, standing from his pew, is a man who forged documents, made false accusations, and attempted to disrupt a legal ceremony for personal gain. He looked at Halverston with open disgust. I think you should leave, Halverston, before this gets worse for you. I'm not going anywhere. Yes, Dominic said quietly. You are. Because if you don't leave now, I will have you arrested for fraud, forgery, and attempted extortion. And unlike your flimsy accusations against me, I have actual evidence, starting with those forged medical records. Halverston looked around wildly, found no support in the sea of faces staring back at him, only judgment and disgust. This isn't over, he hissed. Yes, it is, Elara said. You lost. Accept it. For a long moment, she thought he might actually attack them. His hands were clenched into fists, his whole body shaking with fury. Then Lord Ashford gestured to two footmen standing nearby. Please escort Lord Halverston from the premises. They didn't have to drag him. Halverston left on his own, but his parting look promised revenge. The chapel doors slammed behind him. The silence that followed was stunned. Then Lord Pemberton started clapping. It spread slowly, a smattering of applause that grew into something real. Not everyone joined in, but enough did. Enough to matter. The vicar cleared his throat. Shall we continue with the ceremony? Elara looked at Dominic. He was staring at the crowd like he couldn't quite believe what had just happened. She squeezed his hand. Your Grace. He turned to her. The mask he always wore had slipped completely, and what she saw underneath was raw and vulnerable and completely overwhelmed. Yes, he said hoarsely. Let's continue. The vicar resumed the ceremony, the traditional words about commitment and partnership and binding their lives together. When it came time for the vows, Dominic's voice was steady again, but she could hear the emotion underneath. I, Dominic Ravencroft, take you, Elara Whitcomb, to be my wife, to protect and cherish, to honor and respect, from this day forward. Elara repeated the words back to him, meant every one of them. When the vicar pronounced them married, Dominic kissed her like she was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. The chapel erupted in genuine applause this time. They walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, past faces that were smiling now instead of judging, out into the gray afternoon that somehow felt brighter than it had any right to. Outside, Thomas was waiting with the rest of the staff. When he saw them, he bowed. Congratulations, Your Grace. Your Grace. The title sounded natural now. Right. Dominic pulled him into a brief, fierce embrace. Thank you for everything. We're family, Thomas said simply. That's what family does. The reception was held in the Manor's ballroom. Nothing elaborate. Simple food, local wine, the same string quartet from the ceremony playing cheerful music. People mingled and talked, and if some of them still looked uncertain about the Duke and his new bride, at least they were staying. Elara made her rounds, accepting congratulations and making small talk. Her father appeared at one point, actually sober, and told her he was proud of her. You stood up to Halverston, he said. That took courage. I learned from watching what happens when you don't stand up to people, she replied. Not kindly, but not cruelly either, just honest. He nodded, accepting it. I'm going back to the estate tomorrow. Start sorting through the debts properly. Figure out what can actually be saved. Good. And Elara? I am sorry for all of it. She studied his face, saw genuine remorse there, not just self-pity. I know, but apologies aren't enough. You need to actually change. I will. He managed a weak smile. Or you'll let the creditors have everything. Exactly. He left. Elara turned to find Dominic watching her from across the room. He crossed to her side, handed her a glass of champagne. Everything all right? Define all right. She took a sip. We just survived a public ambush by a vengeful aristocrat using forged documents. I'm calling that a win. How did you know? He asked. About Whitmore being Halverston's cousin? I didn't. I was bluffing. At his stunned expression, she laughed. My father mentioned the name last night. When Halverston produced the records, I saw the signature and took a chance. You took a chance? He shook his head. You bluffed your way through destroying his credibility. I learned from the best. You've been bluffing about being a monster for 12 years. Something in his expression cracked. I'm not sure I was entirely bluffing. Yes, you were. And now everyone knows it. She set down her glass. Dominic, what happened today? People saw the truth. Saw you defending yourself without violence, saw the staff standing by you, saw Halverston's lies exposed. That matters. Does it? Look around. He did. Saw people talking, smiling, saw Thomas laughing with some of the footmen, saw Mrs. Hartley directing servers with the same brisk efficiency she always had. Saw Lord Ashford and Dr. Pemberton in deep conversation, both occasionally glancing his way with something that might have been respect. They're not afraid anymore, Elara said quietly. They might not all believe you're a saint, but they don't believe you're a devil either. That's progress. Dominic's hand found hers. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. The afternoon wore on. Eventually, guests started to leave, giving congratulations and making polite excuses about the weather and the roads. By evening, only the household staff remained, cleaning up the debris of the celebration. Elara found herself alone in the ballroom, watching them work. Tomorrow she'd wake up as the Duchess of Ravencroft. Everything would be different. Everything already was different. There you are. Dominic appeared in the doorway. He'd removed his jacket, loosened his collar, looked more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. I've been looking for you. Just thinking. About how this morning I was terrified the wedding would be a disaster, and it was just not the kind I expected. She turned to face him. We actually did it. We won. You won, he corrected. I would have let Halverston tear me apart before I'd have thought to question those records. Then it's a good thing you have me now. He crossed the room, pulled her close. Yes, it is. When he kissed her this time, there was no audience, no performance. Just the two of them in an empty ballroom, married and somehow still standing despite everything that had tried to break them. Come on, Dominic murmured against her mouth. Let's go home. We are home. No, not the manor. Our rooms. His eyes were dark, intent. You said something last night about no more separate quarters. Heat flooded through her. I did. Did you mean it? Every word. He took her hand and led her out of the ballroom, through corridors that felt less forbidding now, up the stairs to the family wing where she'd never been before. His rooms were surprisingly warm, a fire already burning in the hearth, lamps lit against the growing dark. The furniture was comfortable but worn, clearly used rather than just for show. Books everywhere, papers on the desk. It looked like someone actually lived here. It looked like a home. Second thoughts? Dominic asked quietly. Elara turned to face him. Not even first thoughts, just certainty. He exhaled shakily. I don't know how to do this. How to be this. Neither do I. She stepped closer. But I think that's all right. We'll figure it out. Together, he said. Together, she agreed. And when he kissed her again, when his careful control finally crumbled completely, when they stumbled toward the bed still learning each other, Elara thought that maybe, just maybe, they'd actually survive this. Not just survive, thrive. Outside, the last light faded from the sky. Inside Ravencroft Manor, for the first time in 12 years, the Duke wasn't alone. And somewhere in the village, Halverston was packing his bags and nursing his wounded pride. The battle wasn't over, but for tonight, they'd won. That was enough. That was enough. For one night, at least. Elara woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and Dominic's arm draped across her waist. She lay still for a moment, taking inventory. The morning after. She was married. To a duke who'd been labeled a monster for half his life, who'd finally let someone see past the armor. She turned carefully. Dominic was still asleep, face relaxed in a way she'd never seen. Younger, somehow. Less haunted. She touched his cheek gently and his eyes opened, gray and clear and focused on her immediately. "Good morning," she whispered. "Is it?" His voice was rough with sleep. "I keep thinking I'll wake up and find yesterday was a dream." "Which part? The wedding or the humiliating Halverston in front of half the county?" "Both." His arm tightened around her. "Mostly the part where you stayed. I made vows. I don't break those lightly." "Even vows made under duress?" She kissed him instead of answering. When they broke apart, he was smiling, tentative but real. A knock at the door interrupted them. Dominic groaned. "Whoever that is, they're fired." "You can't fire everyone who interrupts us," Elara said, sitting up and reaching for a robe. "Watch me." But it was Mrs. Hartley's voice that called through the door. "Your Grace?" "Your Graces?" "I apologize for the intrusion, but there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent." Dominic was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. "Who?" "Lady Catherine Merrill, Your Grace." Elara's breath caught. Dominic froze mid-motion, shirt half-buttoned. "Catherine's here? That's impossible. She's in France." Nevertheless, she's in the drawing room, looking rather determined. They dressed in record time. Elara barely had time to run her fingers through her hair before Dominic was pulling her toward the door. They made it to the drawing room in minutes. Catherine Merrill stood by the window, exactly as pale and elegant as the portrait Elara had seen in one of the galleries. She turned when they entered, and her eyes went immediately to Dominic. "Hello, Dominic." "Catherine." His voice was carefully neutral. "What are you doing here?" "Fixing a mistake." She glanced at Elara, then back to Dominic. "I received your letter. And then I received 3 more. From Halverston. Each one more threatening than the last." Her jaw tightened. "Marcus wanted to ignore them, to stay safe. But I couldn't. Not when I knew what Halverston was planning." "You didn't have to come," Dominic said. "I would never have asked." "I know. That's why I'm here." Catherine sat, gesturing for them to do the same. "Halverston came to Marseille 3 months ago. Found me somehow, learned about Marcus. He offered me money to testify against you. When I refused, he threatened to expose Marcus to his family. They're wealthy merchants who would have disowned him for marrying beneath his station." "So you wrote the letter," Elara said quietly. "I wrote the letter, but I've been regretting it since the moment I sent it." Catherine looked at Dominic. "You were kind to me when you had no reason to be. You helped me escape a situation that was suffocating me, and I repaid that by abandoning you when you needed help. You had your own life to protect, but you still helped me." Her voice was firm. "So I'm here. I'm willing to testify. To tell anyone who'll listen that you never threatened me, never hurt me, never did anything except let me go when I asked." Dominic sat heavily. "Halverston left yesterday, after being exposed at the wedding." Catherine's eyebrows rose. "Then I'm too late?" "No," Elara said. "You're not. He may have left, but he'll be back. Men like him don't give up that easily." "Elara's right," Dominic said. "Halverston spent years building this vendetta. Yesterday was a setback, not a defeat. He'll regroup, find new angles of attack." "Then I'll stay until this is truly finished." Catherine met his gaze. "I owe you that much." "You owe me nothing." "I disagree." She stood. "Now, I need to find accommodations in the village." "You'll stay here," Elara said. Both of them looked at her. "What?" "We have 60 rooms gathering dust. And if Halverston does try something else, having Catherine under our roof makes it harder for him to claim she's being coerced." Catherine smiled. "I like her, Dominic. Much better choice than me." "I didn't choose you," Dominic said dryly. "Our parents did." "Exactly." Catherine turned to Elara. "Thank you for the offer. I accept. And congratulations on the marriage. From what I saw yesterday in the village, the gossip is already spreading. You handled Halverston brilliantly." "You were in the village yesterday?" Elara asked. "Arrived late afternoon, just in time to hear about the scene at the wedding." Catherine's expression turned grim. I also heard Halverston ranting in the inn. He's talking about going to London, appealing to the House of Lords directly. Dominic swore quietly. Of course he is. What can he do there? Elara asked. File formal complaints. Request an inquiry into my fitness to hold the title. If he can get enough peers on his side, they could call for a hearing. Dominic stood, began pacing. It would be public. Every detail of my father's death, my mother's suicide, every rumor about me would be examined and debated by the entire peerage. Can we stop it? Maybe, if we move fast. He turned to Catherine. Would you be willing to testify before the Lords? If it comes to that? Yes, absolutely. And I need to contact Lord Ashford and Lord Pemberton. They witnessed what happened yesterday. Their testimony would carry weight. Dominic was already moving toward his study. I'll need character witnesses, people who can speak to my management of the estate, my treatment of tenants. Dominic. Elara caught his arm. Slow down. We don't even know if he's actually going to file anything. He will. It's his last play. Dominic's expression was grim. And if he succeeds, if the Lords decide I'm unfit, I lose everything. The title, the estate, the ability to protect anyone, including her. He didn't say it, but Elara heard it anyway. Then we build the strongest defense possible, she said, but we do it smart, not panicked. He took a breath, nodded. You're right, I'm sorry, I know. She squeezed his hand. But we're not alone this time. We have Catherine, we have the household, we have allies. She glanced at Catherine. How long can you stay? As long as needed. Marcus understands. He's not happy about it, but he understands. Good. Elara was already thinking ahead. Then here's what we do. We document everything. Every act of kindness Dominic's shown, every improvement made to the estate, every person who can testify to his character. We build a case so strong that Halverston's accusations look like exactly what they are, a personal vendetta. That could take weeks, Dominic said. Then we have weeks. Unless you know when Halverston plans to file, Catherine cleared her throat. Actually, I might. I overheard him at the inn. He was talking about filing the petition next month, giving himself time to gather more evidence. She made air quotes around the last word. A month. Dominic's mind was clearly racing. That's actually workable. It's more than workable. It's enough time to bury him. Elara turned to Catherine. We'll need your full testimony documented. Everything about why you left, how Dominic helped, what Halverston threatened. I'll write it all down today. And I'll start compiling estate records, Dominic said. Improvements made, rents collected, tenant complaints addressed. If Halverston wants to paint me as an unstable tyrant, I'll show them an estate that runs smoothly and fairly. For the first time since Catherine had arrived, Elara saw hope in his expression instead of fear. The next 3 weeks were a blur of activity. Catherine proved invaluable. Not just her testimony, but her connections. She wrote to friends in London, discreetly spreading a counter-narrative to Halverston's poison. Lord Ashford and Lord Pemberton both agreed to testify if needed and brought 2 more peers with them when they visited the estate to verify conditions personally. Thomas compiled testimonies from staff, some going back decades, speaking to both Dominic's character and his father's cruelty. The village vicar provided records of charitable donations. Tenant farmers submitted letters praising the Duke's fair treatment. Elara coordinated it all, creating a comprehensive document that painted a picture completely at odds with Halverston's narrative. Not a perfect man, but a good one. Someone who'd made mistakes but tried to do right by the people depending on him. Her father, surprisingly, helped. He'd sobered up, gone through his accounts, and discovered that several of his creditors were connected to Halverston, part of the same web of financial manipulation. He provided documentation of that too, showing a pattern of Halverston using debt as a weapon. By the 3rd week, they had a case. A strong one. Then the summons arrived. Elara was in the study with Dominic when the messenger brought it. Official seal, heavy paper, formal language requesting the Duke of Ravencroft's presence before the House of Lords to address questions regarding his fitness to hold his title. Dominic read it twice, face expressionless. Then he set it down carefully. When? Elara asked. 2 weeks. That's less time than we thought. Halverston must have moved faster than Catherine heard. He looked at her. I'll need to go to London. Prepare. Meet with my barrister. We'll need to go to London, Elara corrected. I'm not letting you face this alone. Elara sighed. Don't, we're married. Where you go, I go. She picked up the summons. Besides, I've spent 3 weeks building this case. I'm not missing the grand finale. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. What did I do to deserve you? Agreed to marry a woman who won't shut up and let you suffer in noble silence. His laugh was shaky but genuine. They left for London 3 days later. Catherine came with them, along with Thomas and Mrs. Hartley, both insisting they wouldn't be left behind. The journey took 2 days, and they spent most of it rehearsing. Going over testimony, anticipating questions, preparing for every possible attack Halverston might make. London was gray and crowded, and nothing like the quiet countryside of Ravencroft. Their townhouse was smaller than the manor, but still impressive. 4 stories of elegant architecture in a respectable neighborhood. Dominic had barely used it since inheriting, and it showed in the dust covers and stale air. Needs work, Mrs. Hartley said, already mentally cataloging improvements. It needs to survive the next week, Dominic replied. After that, I may not own it anymore. Don't talk like that, Elara said sharply. They had 5 days before the hearing. Dominic spent most of them closeted with his barrister, a sharp-eyed man named Thornton, who specialized in peerage law. Elara spent them meeting with their witnesses, making sure everyone knew their role. The night before the hearing, she found Dominic on the roof terrace, staring out at the city lights. Can't sleep? She asked, joining him. Keep thinking about tomorrow, all the ways it could go wrong. All the ways it could go right, she countered. He turned to her. What if we lose? What if Halverston wins and I lose everything? Then we start over, build something new. She took his hand. Dominic, I didn't marry you for the title. I married you because you're stubborn and damaged and trying so hard to be better than the man you're afraid you are. That's not very romantic. It's honest, she smiled, and I'd rather have honest than romantic. He kissed her, soft and lingering. Win or lose tomorrow, thank you. For fighting. For staying. For giving me something worth protecting. You're welcome. Now come to bed. You need rest. I need you. That too. The House of Lords met in a chamber designed to intimidate. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, rows of seats rising in tiers. Elara sat in the gallery reserved for family, Catherine beside her. Below, Dominic stood before the assembled peers with Thornton at his side. Halverston sat in this petitioner's section, looking confident. Too confident. The Lord Chancellor called the session to order. We are here to address the petition of Lord Halverston regarding the fitness of the Duke of Ravencroft to hold his title and estates. Lord Halverston, you may present your case. Halverston stood. He was good, Elara had to admit. Presented his accusations with just enough emotion to seem sincere without being theatrical. Painted Dominic as unstable, violent, a danger to society. He produced his evidence, the forged medical records, which Dr. Pemberton had already discredited, but Halverston conveniently ignored that. Letters from unnamed sources claiming to have witnessed the Duke's violent temper. Financial records allegedly showing mismanagement of the estate. It was all carefully crafted nonsense, but it sounded damning. When Halverston finished, the Lord Chancellor turned to Dominic. Your Grace, you may respond. Thornton stood. My Lord Chancellor, we have documentation that refutes every one of Lord Halverston's claims. If I may present our witnesses? Proceed. They'd planned this carefully. Dr. Pemberton went first, methodically destroying the credibility of the medical records. Then Lord Ashford and Lord Pemberton testified about what they'd witnessed at the wedding, Halverston's forgery, his manipulation, his vendetta. Thomas came next. His testimony about the night of the old Duke's death was powerful, simple, honest, devastating. Elara watched the faces of the assembled peers shift from skepticism to shock to sympathy. Then Catherine. She was poised and articulate, describing exactly how Dominic had helped her escape an unwanted engagement, how he'd given her money and asked nothing in return, how Halverston had threatened her to prevent her testimony. The Duke is many things, Catherine said clearly. Reserved, certainly. Burdened by a difficult past, absolutely, but violent, unstable, dangerous. She shook her head. I trusted him with my life and my future. He never once betrayed that trust. Finally, Tenant farmers and village residents spoke about the Duke's management of the estate. Fair rents, improvements made, problems addressed, a picture of someone who took his responsibilities seriously. By the time they finished, Halverston's confident expression had crumbled. The Lord Chancellor called for closing arguments. Thornton was brilliant, tying together all the testimony into a narrative about a man who'd survived abuse, protected his mother's memory at great personal cost, and spent years trying to do right by the people depending on him. Lord Halverston would have you believe the Duke of Ravencroft is a monster, Thornton concluded, but the evidence shows something very different. A man who's made mistakes, certainly, who carries burdens and scars from a traumatic past, absolutely, but a man unfit to hold his title? The testimony you've heard today proves otherwise. Halverston gave his closing argument, angrier now, less polished, talked about duty and standards and the importance of upholding the dignity of the peerage. It rang hollow after everything they'd heard. The Lord Chancellor dismissed them to deliberate. Elara met Dominic in the hallway outside. "How long will they take?" she asked. "Could be hours, could be days." He looked exhausted. "Depends on how contentious the debate is." It took 3 hours. When they were called back, Elara's heart was hammering so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Dominic's hand found hers, squeezed tight. The Lord Chancellor stood. After careful consideration of all testimony and evidence presented, the House has reached a decision. He looked directly at Dominic. The petition to declare the Duke of Ravencroft unfit to hold his title is denied. Furthermore, we find Lord Halverston's accusations to be without merit and potentially motivated by personal animus rather than legitimate concern for the peerage. Relief crashed over Elara like a wave. Beside her, Catherine was crying quietly. The Lord Chancellor continued. The House also wishes to note its concern regarding the forged documents presented by Lord Halverston. We recommend the matter be referred to the appropriate authorities for potential prosecution. Halverston stood, face purple with rage. "This is absurd. You're letting him—" "Lord Halverston," the Lord Chancellor said coldly, "you would do well to cease speaking before you make this worse for yourself. This proceeding is concluded." They filed out in a daze. In the hallway, Lord Ashford approached them. "Well done, Your Grace." "Your Graces," he nodded to Elara. The testimony was compelling, and Halverston's overreach worked against him. Trying to use forged documents before the Lords was remarkably stupid. "Thank you for your support," Dominic said. His voice was rough. "Thank you for being worth supporting." Ashford smiled slightly. "I suspect we'll be seeing more of you in London now. You have allies here, Ravencroft. Use them." He left. Thomas appeared, grinning widely. "We won, Your Grace!" "We won," Dominic repeated, like he couldn't quite believe it. They found Halverston in the courtyard, being confronted by 2 men in official dress. Constables, Elara realized, taking him into custody for questioning about the forged documents. As they led him away, Halverston caught sight of Dominic. "This isn't over." "Yes," Dominic said quietly. "It is." And this time, Elara believed it. The journey back to Ravencroft took 3 days. They stopped at inns, took their time, let the victory settle in. Catherine left them in Dover, heading back to Marseille and Marcus with a promise to visit soon. "Thank you," Dominic told her before she left, "for coming back, for risking everything. Thank you for teaching me that sometimes the brave thing is to stand and fight instead of running." Catherine hugged Elara. "Take care of him. He needs someone who won't let him hide." "I have no intention of letting him hide ever again," Elara promised. When they finally arrived back at the manor, the household was waiting. Someone had gotten word ahead, probably Mrs. Hartley's mysterious network of informants, and the entire staff had assembled in the entrance hall. They erupted in applause when Dominic and Elara walked through the doors. "Speech!" someone called. Dominic looked panicked. Elara elbowed him gently. "Just thank them," she whispered. He cleared his throat. "I thank you, all of you, for your testimony, your support, your willingness to stand by me when you had every reason not to." His voice grew stronger. "This house, this estate, it's not just mine. It belongs to all of us. And I promise to honor that, to be worthy of the faith you've shown." More applause. Then the crowd dispersed, back to their duties, leaving Dominic and Elara standing in the entrance hall alone. "You did it," Elara said softly. "We did it. He pulled her close. I couldn't have survived this without you. Good thing you don't have to find out. That night they had dinner in the smaller dining room, just the two of them, no formality, no expectations. Simple food, good wine, comfortable silence. What happens now? Elara asked eventually. Now? Dominic considered. Now we live. I start attending sessions of the Lords more regularly. We make improvements to the estate. We figure out what kind of life we want to build together. Sounds terrifying. Sounds perfect. She raised her glass. To terrifying perfection, then. He clinked his glass against hers. To surviving, to fighting, to whatever comes next. They drank. And for the first time since Elara had arrived at Ravencroft Manor all those weeks ago, the future felt like something to look forward to instead of something to endure. 3 months passed. Winter gave way to early spring, the grounds around Ravencroft slowly coming back to life. Elara had started working with the tenants' wives, organizing a school for their children. Dominic had begun attending Parliament regularly, building alliances and slowly reshaping his reputation from reclusive duke to engaged peer. They fought sometimes. She was stubborn. He was proud. Neither of them knew how to back down. But they also laughed more than Elara had thought possible. Found joy in small things. Learned to lean on each other instead of carrying everything alone. Halverston had been prosecuted for fraud. The trial was brief. Too much evidence against him. He'd been fined heavily and stripped of several minor honors. Last Elara heard, he'd left England entirely, relocating to the continent to escape the scandal. Good riddance. She was in the garden when Dominic found her, examining the flower beds that were just starting to show green shoots. There you are, he said. I've been looking everywhere. I've been here, planning what to plant. She gestured at the empty beds. Your mother had roses here, according to Mrs. Hartley. I was thinking we could bring them back. She'd like that. He sat beside her on the stone bench. I have news. Something in his tone made her look up. Good news or bad news? Good, I think. Catherine's getting married, officially this time. She sent an invitation. That's wonderful. We should go. There's more. He pulled out another letter. Your father wrote. His creditors have agreed to a settlement. With the money I provided, plus some assets he's been liquidating, he can keep the estate. He'll be living modestly, but he'll survive. Elara took the letter, scanned it. Her father's handwriting was shaky, but the words were clear, apologetic, promising to do better. Do you believe him? Dominic asked. I don't know, but I'm willing to give him a chance to prove it. She looked at Dominic. You taught me that people deserve second chances, even when they've hurt us. I taught you that. You lived it. Every day, trying to be better than your father, better than the rumors, better than your own worst fears. She kissed him softly. You're the bravest person I know. I'm terrified constantly. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. He pulled her close, and they sat there in the garden as the sun began to set. In the distance, Elara could hear the household, servants calling to each other, preparations for dinner underway, the ordinary sounds of a home that was finally becoming one. There's one more thing, Dominic said against her hair. What? Mrs. Hartley thinks you're pregnant. Elara pulled back to stare at him. What? I haven't said anything. She's known for 3 weeks, apparently. Says you've been tired in the mornings, avoiding certain foods, looking peaky at odd times. He was smiling now. Is she right? Elara's mind raced. The exhaustion she'd been feeling, the way certain smells made her queasy. The fact that her courses were late, which she'd been ignoring because there was so much else to deal with. Maybe. Probably. She put a hand to her stomach. I wasn't going to say anything until I was sure. Are you happy about it? She thought about it. A child. Their child. Someone who would grow up in this house without fear, without violence, with 2 parents who were trying their best despite their flaws. Yes, she said. I'm happy. Terrified, but happy. Good. He rested his hand over hers. Because I'm terrified too, but also happier than I ever thought possible. They sat in the growing dusk, 2 damaged people who'd found each other by accident and chosen to stay by design. The future stretched ahead, uncertain, challenging, probably messy, in all the ways real life was messy. But it was theirs. They'd fought for it, bled for it, built it together from the wreckage of their pasts, and that was worth everything. 6 months later, Elara gave birth to a son. They named him Marcus, after Catherine's husband, who'd shown them that courage sometimes meant supporting someone else's fight. He had Dominic's gray eyes and Elara's stubborn chin, and the entire household fell in love with him instantly. Dominic held his son for the first time with hands that shook. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "How to be a father. My only example was—" "Then we'll figure it out together," Elara said. "No more patterns. No more repeating the past. We get to write a new story." He looked at her, this woman who'd walked into his life expecting a monster and found a man instead, who'd fought beside him, challenged him, refused to let him hide in his carefully constructed isolation. "I love you," he said. First time he'd said it out loud, though he'd been showing it in 1,000 small ways for months. "I know," she smiled. "I love you too. Took you long enough to say it." Their son squirmed in his arms, making a small noise of protest. Dominic looked down at him, this tiny, perfect thing that was half him and half Elara, and entirely their future. "We're going to be all right," he said. Not a question, a statement of fact. "Yes," Elara agreed. "We are." And in that moment, surrounded by the family they'd built and the life they'd fought for, Dominic Ravencroft finally believed it. The monster everyone had feared was just a man who'd been hurt. The Duchess everyone had pitied was just a woman who'd refused to be a victim. And together, they were writing a new ending to a story that could have destroyed them both. Not a perfect ending. There would be more fights, more challenges, more moments of doubt, but it was real. It was theirs, and it was enough. Outside, spring was turning to summer. The roses Elara had planted were beginning to bloom. And in Ravencroft Manor, for the first time in generations, there was laughter in the hallways and hope in the air. The legacy of fear had ended. A new legacy, built on choice and courage and love that hadn't been bought but earned, was just beginning.